Hello, welcome to Quackalope. Thank you for being here. Today I'm bringing you a Kickstarter preview of Final Frontier from Cosmodrome Games. And if you're familiar with SmartPhone Inc. or you enjoy heavy Euros like Pipeline, this is a game that, well, you should be paying attention to. It's going to combine worker placement, a little bit of Tableau, kind of engine building, resource management, and crunchy, satisfying Euro victory points like you'd all expect. In this video, I want to give you a highlight of how the game actually operates and run, but then dig into, for a little bit, the strategy and the combinations that you're going to experience, so you have a sense of what it's going to feel like to play Final Frontier. And of course, because this is a Quackalope video, we should start with the theme. Now, I know theme sometimes in Euros is not the thing that people are paying attention to, but Final Frontier is presenting a unique and well-integrated thematic experience as well, which, when you combine that with mechanics, is always a lovely thing to discover. You're actually going to be exploring the planet Janus. After Earth has ran out of population, space, and resources, you're now trying to actually gather the resource helium-3 and return it back to Earth to go ahead and continue producing the electricity and the resources and the nuclear power that you need to, well, function as a society and not watch as billions and billions of people suffer a death, a cold extinction, something along those lines. We find ourselves here on the cold side, the dark side of Janus. It's a planet that is always facing a singular direction, always has a star across one of its galaxies, and because we're on the cold side of the planet, there's actually a lot of access to those resources, but it is also a frozen wasteland. We're going to be moving our carriers around the board here, slowly generating technology and resources, building out our own civilization, gaining wealth that allows us to bring more resources down onto the planet, doing our very best to gather and ship resources back to Earth to maintain that civilization, that population that has extended themselves beyond human capacity, and at the same time, we're going to be developing Janus as well. We want to go ahead and establish scientific engines and resource enterprises and mining operations so that we can function here on this side of, again, a very cold, very forgotten, very distant planet. Throughout the course of this game, you're going to be moving through 3 different rounds, and these rounds will consist of actions where you're going to be moving your carrier from one position to another, going from city to city in these various different districts. Now, I'm set up for a 2-player game here, but in a 3 or 4-player game, you'd actually have another set of boards extending down to the bottom, and these boards do loop around from position to position, so you're never too far away from the other locations you want to travel to. You'll move from one location to another, collecting whatever card, if it's still remaining on the board, adding that to your hand. These are going to be technology that you can then use to build buildings around the different locations that you're at, and we'll get to what buildings do and why they're important in just a moment, but everything that I'm talking about should be summed up to resource management, engine building, and victory points. This is a Euro in the sense that you're trying to be as efficient and precise with everything that you have and escalate that into endgame score and endgame victory points. You'll get those through a variety of means, planets being one of them, deliveries and successfully shipping things back to Earth being another, and then just the general infrastructure and Tableau that you've built will have some residual victory points on it as well. But stepping back again, on your turn, you're going to be moving your carrier from one location to another, gathering the card that's there, and then taking one of 3 different actions. And we have helpful little player boards here that walk you through that. You can do a construct phase, you can do a collaborate action, or you could do a raise funds action. A raise funds is going to be the simplest action. You're just going to go ahead and take some of the subsidies that are available up here. That'll escalate the timer or the round of the game. Whenever these subsidies run out, you'll be moving from round 1 to 2 and then 2 to 3. In a 2-player game, I believe it's 9 total cards up there in the tableau for a total number of rounds, something like 6 or 7. Or a total number of subsidies available before the round ends of something like 6 or 7. I'd have to double check the math on that. But raise funds is just going to get you resources. Collaborate is going to be where you're interacting with the planets, and construct is going to be where you're developing the planets. If you choose to construct, you'll have a few different options. You'll be working with the cards that you have in your hand. For instance, if I'd picked up this card here, I would be able to build a hub in Wolf. Now, if you have played something like Brass Birmingham, you know that these cards are multi-use. A similar mechanic is used here, where I could use this to get a better advantage and build this research hub here in Wolf, which would be fantastic. The city wants it, there's space for it. However, if I decide to build a research hub anywhere else on the board, I could also do that. It does not have to be in its designated city. If I do match up with the designated city, I'll get the option to slot this into a project location on the bottom of my board. That project location is then going to give you more escalating abilities, and these things will start tying together and chaining throughout the course of the game. You can get a really satisfying engine working up where you spend some resources, you get some resources back, you turn those resources into various different credits or units that you need, you buy a scientist, you place him down on the board. It can start escalating pretty satisfyingly. But if I decide to build in a location that is not in the matching district, I can still do that. I'll place down my building. Let's say I wanted to build a little research hub over here on Zanwu. I'll place down my research building, this card will be discarded, and I will then get to go ahead and grab a subsidy because, well, I'm still developing society and investing in the local economy. These subsidy cards not only, like I've already established, escalate the end of the game, but they also have a ton of really good benefits on them, and so getting a choice or a chance to go up there and grab some of those might be a core part of your early game strategy. I found that this game really rushed through round 1, stayed for a bit on round 2, and then was a balancing act on round 3, where I almost didn't want the game to end by the time that the subsidies were being exhausted. I was just getting my engine up and running, and I guarantee that with extended plays and diving back in again and again, I could actually get way more efficient with the choices that I've made. That's why I compare this to something along the lines of Pipeline or SmartPhone Inc., where the first few games you dig in, you're kind of just figuring out those mechanics, but as the Euro engine starts to reveal itself and how tight the economy is starts to make more and more sense, you find that there's a ton of opportunity for extended actions that don't actually start exhausting or driving endgame, which is a very interesting puzzle, but it is on the heavier side of the spectrum. So that's the construct phase of this game. I'll be playing down that card, I will be building and either getting a benefit and adding to my tableau or getting some resources from the game's subsidy engine. Outside of that, I could collaborate. Collaboration is going to be the third potential action, and that's where I send researchers to the various different buildings and locations that are already here on the board. You can see I already have some scientists and some workers slotted in here to the Wolf location, and these units are going to not only generate you resources for, well, the course of the game, but they're also going to return credits back to whoever owns the building and potentially score a ton of victory points towards endgame. You see, when you place a worker down, you'll gain mid-game victory points. That helps drive your engine, gives you a really solid footing. However, if you lose control of that planet, by the end of the game, whoever owns dominance in that planet, either from their own personal marks or the buildings that they've built or any abilities that they have that add advantage to those locations, you're going to find that you've actually given your opponent a substantial amount of victory points by placing your own workers down on that space. All of these locations escalate, and you want to make sure you have control of a district if you're investing in that district heavily, which does create a pretty heavy conflict. In a two-player game, I find that you either have two people that are separated, kind of focusing on multi-planet engines, maybe someone swoops in, or you have one planet that's the hub of operation. In a 3 or 4-player game, however, things start getting mixed and mingled a lot more. You absolutely have people that sweep in to gain the resources, which means you have to go develop in another location, or you might decide to go heavy for a planet and then someone gets the opportunity to double down on your location, placing down one of their control marks along with a building, putting your challenge and your control at a higher degree of risk. And of course, if you've invested in a spot, it only makes sense for everyone else to want to chip away, not only at your position on the board and your potential scoring ability, but also securing themselves some endgame victory points at the same time. That is a really, really tight and really, really interesting puzzle, but you cannot ignore collaboration. Victory points are tight in this game, but so are resources, and oftentimes it is almost worth giving up some endgame victory points in order to gain some resources that help develop and generate your engine towards the middle or early stages. Now, the other stuff that's happening on the board here, we've already talked about the subsidies location. That's also going to be the round tracker and driving endgame. But we also have our own 2-player boards, and then we have the industry and science track over here. These tracks are going to have a lot of things happening on them, but the primary things that you're going to see is going to be a row of different objectives that we have from round to round, where we're trying to deliver resources back to Earth if we're able. We're also going to have research. These are going to go to the top portion of our personal boards, and those are going to slot in, giving you, again, more mid-game and end-game abilities, victory points, scoring conditions, territory control mechanics, whatever you need. And these first two are going to be hidden. You're actually going to draw a certain number based on player count, and you won't know what you're going to be able to find there until you start moving up the research track. But like I have revealed here, level 3, the highest end, are going to be revealed for everyone. So if you want to work towards the research-specific ability, or you want to drive your way up that track, you'll be able to know what you're going for. And it won't be till you're up here crossing from these two locations that you actually gain the Research 3, which does happen late in the game. Now, both industry and science tracks will be moved up based off the location that you've actually built, and depending on that, which you can see right here with this lucky chart, you'll either take 1, 2, or multiple steps up on each one of these locations, getting whatever benefit lies in between. These could be extra research cards, these could be various different scientists or workers that get added to your board so you can place them out onto the map, gaining victory points, generating resources, and getting endgame control. These could also be more cards that go into your hand for deliveries that you can make to Earth, working your way towards endgame victory points or mid-game victory points. You see, once a round ends, I will be able to start fulfilling these contracts. But if I have extra contracts in my hand, I can fulfill as many as I'm able to, or as many as I would like until I decide to press pause. This is not a one-stop shop. This is not a do one and then you're done type of operation. These contracts that you're filling won't only give you endgame victory points, though. They're also going to generate for you some resource or some coin, which brings us down onto our main player board. Our main player board is going to have asymmetric ship abilities. These are going to be your starting abilities that you begin the game with. You can either stagger these, having people draw them, or you can randomize them around the table. You're going to have your available buildings, both your large units and your small units. This price sheet here will walk you through what you need to actually construct those buildings. It's not just the card, you will have to spend some resources. Then you're going to have your control markers, and you're going to have your resources. Now, in the game, they have a bit of a weird approach, or a unique approach to the way that resources actually work. All of these white cubes are actually filling slots. I don't have access to any of these resources except for the slots that I have open or empty. Now, what they say in the game is that you're actually going to be paying money, which is a resource token here, to fill this slot, which means you've used that resource. So you kind of have these two economic strategies that you're approaching. You need money to take advantage of the resources that you have, which makes sense, but honestly for myself, I started thematically thinking of it in the realm of shipping containers. I'm using my resource to buy shipping containers so I can access and then utilize or move the resources that I have to whatever destination I need. Whether I'm shipping them back to Earth, which means I'd cover up that red spot, or let's say I'm using them to construct a building here on the planet. Again, I'm using my money to purchase shipping containers to fill in these slots. I'm using those slots, I'm filling them up. They have now moved, they're no longer available. Once I got my head wrapped around that thematic element, I was able to understand the mechanical element of that a lot more. You can do with it what you want, you can approach it however you find the most comfortable, but this little engine is not only weird, it is different. It is something I have not seen in a Euro game before, but it is also an interesting puzzle. It is really frustrating and really tight to not only have to worry about the money that you need to access the resources that you have. Sure, you might be able to go to a planet and generate a ton of resources, but at the same time, you're going to be giving up your own resource of income to do so. Again, you will be placing cubes down on these locations, you'll be then shipping those resources back to yourself, giving you access to them, but you don't have the cubes you need to then use those resources again to move them multiple times from location to location. So that balance, that puzzle, I think is something that people are really going to love. It is something new, it is something unique, it is something that will probably take at least one game to get your mind fully wrapped around. Alright, so we set up the premise of the game. Endgame is going to happen after round 3, and there you're going to calculate your score. Your score is going to be based on a variety of things, but the primary ways that you're going to be scoring is by placing down workers that'll give you mid-game or in-game victory points, by fulfilling contracts that'll happen at the end of every single round, by slowly developing technology and having various different access to different cards on your board. I believe some of them give you mid-game victory points or end-game victory points. I could be wrong about that. It might just be that they manipulate the board state itself. But another primary way, and the thing I've already went over, is going to be the victory points that you get from actually controlling these various different planets. The different planets spread out here are going to generate you victory points in 2 different primary ways. First, whoever controls the entire planet at the end of the game is going to score a massive victory points for however many buildings and locations are filled. But then 2, a lot of your resource stations or your science stations on the board here will actually have some type of conversion principle, conversion rate. Like this one down here, I can go ahead and get rid of a helium in order to generate 2 victory points. That is costing you a resource. That is a decision you have to make. But whenever I take an action here at this location, that might be something that's worthwhile for me to do. So keep that in mind as well. And that's the main premise. That's the overview of this game. Like I've already established, this is coming from the creators of SmartPhone Inc., and there's a lot of elements that feel similar in that. When it comes to the worker placement and the area control, positioning for viability and market control of the different regions that you have. When it comes to the way that the game requires a decent amount of experience to build up your engine for that endgame scoring, but you can really extend your turn through multi-use abilities and through whatever generation you've created. There's a lot of cool things happening here with Frozen Frontier, and it's certainly on the heavier side of the midweight Eurogame category. There's a lot of crunchy goodness here, so if that's the type of game you enjoy and that's something you want to sink your teeth into, you should absolutely be paying attention to this release. I'll have a link down below where you can swing over and check out the Kickstarter page and leave a comment. Let me know. If you have any questions, I'm happy to jump in and answer whatever I'm able to. With that being said, thank you for watching, thank you for being here. Whatever the case, whatever you do, remember to do the important thing. Get out and play some games. See you next time.